a Terran soldier hauling the grievously wounded leader of the alien forces to safety amidst the chaotic hellscape of a raging battle. No sane being would believe it, except Benjamin Scott was doing exactly that on the war-ravaged surface of Zephyrus Prime. Laser bolts flashed through the smoke-filled air as explosions shook the ground. UTF artillery had just scored a direct hit on a Hazari dropship, sending it spiraling to the ground in a fiery blaze. Benjamin surged forward, heedless of the danger, one goal consuming his mind. He had witnessed a lone survivor dragging herself from the mangled wreckage of the craft. And not just any survivor, he recognized the unique markings of Queen Karos herself, supreme ruler of the Hazari, now broken and bleeding on the battlefield. Enemy soldiers converged, determined to protect their fallen monarch, but they were no match for Benjamin's lethally honed reflexes and ruthless precision. He cut through them with unmatched ferocity, never slowing his relentless advance. Reaching the semi-conscious queen, Benjamin hoisted her onto his shoulders without hesitation. The ground bucked under his feet as orbital strikes hammered the area. Gritting his teeth, he sprinted for the nearest cover, jagged shrapnel whizzing past his head. He slid into the sheltering lee of a boulder, gently lowering Karos to assess her injuries. Her exoskeleton was fractured in multiple places, viscous ichor oozing from the cracks. One arm dangled uselessly, the joint a pulverized ruin. Human and alien eyes met, a flash of recognition passing between them. By any sane calculation, Benjamin should kill her now. Karos was directly responsible for so many UTF deaths. Leaving her to die from her wounds would be more mercy than she deserved. But gazing into her pain-clouded eyes, he found he could not. His hand moved of its own accord, activating his comlink. He barked orders for an emergency medevac shuttle. Whatever the consequences, he would see Karos to safety. Two mortal enemies, brought together by the brutalities of war. Their choices in the coming hours might remake the galaxy. Benjamin's comlink crackled to life as he relayed the coordinates for the emergency medevac. ETA, 5 minutes, the voice on the other end confirmed. Those minutes stretched into an eternity as Benjamin carried the unconscious Hazari queen through the war-torn landscape, his senses on high alert for any sign of pursuit. The remote canyon came into view, its jagged walls offering temporary respite from the chaos. Benjamin gently laid Karos down, his hands already reaching for the field medkit at his belt. He worked quickly and efficiently, applying sealant foam to the worst of her fractures and administering a cocktail of painkillers and anti-inflammatories. Karos stirred, her compound eyes flickering open to stare at the human soldier tending to her wounds. Confusion and suspicion warred with grudging gratitude in her gaze. "Why?" she managed to rasp out, her voice thick with pain. Benjamin met her eyes unflinchingly. "Because even enemies can show mercy." The whine of engines announced the shuttle's arrival. It settled onto the canyon floor in a whirlwind of dust, the hatch yawning open to reveal Lieutenant Zara Vasquez at the controls. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene before her. "Are you out of your mind, Ben?" Zara demanded as they carefully maneuvered Karos into the shuttle. "She's the enemy. We should be leaving her to rot, not risking our necks to save her." "We're soldiers, not executioners," Benjamin retorted, strapping himself in next to the queen as Zara took them up. "If there's a chance this could change things, we have to take it." Zara bit back a frustrated retort, focusing on coaxing every ounce of speed from the straining engines. They shot out of the canyon, Hazari plasma blasts sizzling past the cockpit as they raced for the safety of UTF-controlled airspace. In the shuttle's hold, Karos slipped back into unconsciousness, her life now entirely in the hands of those she had fought so long to destroy. Benjamin watched over her, his mind churning with the implications of his actions. Whatever came next, he had made his choice. For better or worse, the fate of two civilizations now hung in the balance. Major Eli Thorne was waiting for them when they touched down at the secret forward operating base. His craggy face was a thundercloud as Benjamin and Zara carefully unloaded their prisoner. "Have you lost your goddamned mind, Scott?" he growled, his hand twitching toward his sidearm. Benjamin stood his ground. "She's more valuable alive than dead, sir. Imagine what we could learn from her, what concessions we could extract." Thorne's eyes narrowed, but he relented with a curt nod. "Get her to medical. Full treatment, but under heavy guard. If she so much as twitches wrong, put her down. As the base's medical team swarmed around Karos, Benjamin found himself assigned as her watcher. He took up a position next to her bed, his rifle cradled in his arms. Karos eyed him warily as she drifted in and out of consciousness. "You should have left me to die," she said hoarsely during one of her lucid moments. "My people will never negotiate. They will burn your worlds to cinders for this insult." "Maybe," Benjamin allowed. "Or maybe this is a chance for something different, a chance for peace." Karos let out a bitter, gurgling laugh that turned into a hacking cough. "Peace? Between your kind and mine? Impossible." Benjamin leaned forward, his gaze intense. "But what if it isn't? What if this is the moment everything changes? What if we could find a way to end this war once and for all?" In the depths of the Hazari flagship, Commander Zorgax smiled coldly as he read the reports of Karos's disappearance. "The Queen is dead," he announced to the assembled officers. "I am now your supreme leader, and I say this war ends only when every last human has been wiped from the face of the galaxy." As Zorgax's proclamation echoed through the ship, Benjamin and Karos stared at each other in the close confines of the medical bay, two mortal enemies poised on the brink of a choice that would shape the future of the intergalactic conflict and the fate of life itself. The medical bay hummed with the steady beep of monitors as Benjamin kept his vigilant watch over the recovering Hazari Queen. Karos's chitinous exoskeleton showed signs of healing, the fractures slowly knitting together under the expert care of UTF physicians. "Your people's technology is impressive," Karos admitted grudgingly, her compound eyes fixed on Benjamin. "I did not expect such advanced medical capabilities from humans." Benjamin allowed himself a small smile. "There's a lot about us you don't know, Your Majesty, just as there's much we don't understand about the Hazari." Their conversation was cut short by a sudden commotion in the hallway. Major Thorne burst into the room, his face ashen. "Scott, we've got a situation. Intel just picked up chatter from the Hazari homeworld. There's some kind of power struggle happening." Benjamin's brow furrowed. What kind of power struggle? Before Thorne could answer, Karos let out a hiss of dismay. "Zara!" she growled, struggling to sit up. "My sister! She's making her move." "Your sister?" Benjamin echoed, surprised. Karos's mandibles clicked in agitation. "Ambitious, cunning. She's always resented living in my shadow. If she sees this opportunity—" The Queen's words trailed off as alarms began blaring throughout the base. Thorne's comm unit crackled to life. "Sir, long-range scanners have detected a massive Hazari fleet on approach. They'll be within striking distance of our outer colonies within hours." Benjamin's blood ran cold. He locked eyes with Karos, seeing his own dawning horror reflected in her alien gaze. "Zorgax," Karos spat. "He's using my absence to push for all-out war." Thorne was already barking orders into his comm. "Initiate emergency evacuation protocols. I want this base stripped and cleared in 30 minutes. The next half hour passed in a blur of controlled chaos. Benjamin helped Karos to her feet, supporting her still weakened form as they made their way through corridors teeming with personnel rushing to and fro. They had almost reached the hangar bay when the first explosions rocked the facility. Alarms shrieked as the base's perimeter defenses engaged. "Hazari strike team," someone shouted. "They've breached the outer walls." Benjamin's training kicked in. He pulled Karos into an alcove, shielding her with his body as laser fire erupted around them. UTF soldiers returned fire, the air thick with ozone and the screams of the wounded. Through the smoke and confusion, Benjamin caught a glimpse of familiar faces. Zara and several of his squad mates cut down in the crossfire. His heart clenched, but there was no time for grief. Making a split-second decision, Benjamin scooped Karos into his arms and sprinted for a nearby emergency exit. They emerged into the harsh sunlight of Zephyrus Prime, the sounds of battle fading behind them. "Where are you taking me?" Karos demanded as Benjamin commandeered a scout vehicle. "Somewhere safe," he replied grimly, gunning the engine. "We're getting off this rock." As they sped away from the smoldering ruins of the base, Benjamin's mind raced. He knew he was likely throwing away his career, perhaps even committing treason. But something told him that keeping Karos alive and out of Zorgax's hands was vital to ending this war. They crested a ridge, the vast wilderness of Zephyrus Prime stretching before them. Somewhere out there lay a chance for peace, if only they could find it. Behind them, the skies darkened with the approach of the Hazari Armada, heralding a new and terrible phase of the intergalactic conflict. Benjamin tightened his grip on the controls, acutely aware of the alien queen beside him and the weight of countless lives now resting on their shoulders. Whatever came next, there was no turning back. The scout vehicle roared across the barren landscape of Zephyrus Prime, kicking up plumes of reddish dust in its wake. Benjamin's knuckles were white on the controls as he navigated the treacherous terrain, his eyes constantly scanning for pursuit. Beside him, Karos shifted uncomfortably, her alien physiology ill-suited to the vehicle's human design. "We cannot outrun them forever," she chittered, mandibles clicking with agitation. Benjamin nodded grimly. "We're not trying to. We just need to get far enough to—" His words trailed off as warning lights flashed on the dashboard. The air outside was growing increasingly thin and toxic. With practiced efficiency, Benjamin engaged the vehicle's environmental seals and donned his combat-grade rebreather. He tossed a spare to Karos, who examined it with wary curiosity before affixing it to her face. "The atmosphere here is not stable," Karos observed, her voice muffled by the breathing apparatus. "Your people's terraforming efforts are incomplete." "Or sabotaged," Benjamin muttered, recalling intelligence reports of Hazari interference with UTF colonization attempts. They pressed on through a landscape scarred by conflict, impact craters, twisted wreckage of starships, and the occasional bleached bone poking through the rust-colored soil. The scout vehicle's power cells were dangerously low when they reached the edge of a vast chasm. Benjamin brought the vehicle to a halt, staring at the yawning abyss before them. Noxious fumes rose from its depths, distorting the air with shimmering heat. "The Shrika Rift," he breathed. "We'll have to find another way around." Karos's multifaceted eyes scanned the gorge. "There is no time. Our pursuers draw near." Benjamin's mind raced, assessing their options. His gaze fell on a stack of carbon fiber tethers in the vehicle's cargo compartment. "I have an idea," he said, already unspooling the high-tensile cord, "but you're not going to like it." Working swiftly, Benjamin anchored one end of the makeshift bridge to their vehicle, and the other to a jutting rock formation on the far side of the chasm. The result was a precarious span of interwoven cords stretching across the Shrika Rift. "You cannot be serious," Karos hissed, her antenna twitching with alarm. "Dead serious," Benjamin replied, securing the last knot. "Ladies first?" Karos chittered something that might have been a Hazari expletive, but she began inching her way across the improvised bridge. Benjamin followed close behind, hyper-aware of every groan and creak from the strained fibers beneath them. They were halfway across when disaster struck. A tremor shook the chasm, snapping several of the load-bearing cords. The bridge lurched sickeningly, and Benjamin felt himself falling. In that moment of freefall, time seemed to slow. He saw Karos twist in midair, her alien reflexes impossibly fast. Her armored limbs wrapped around him protectively as they plummeted into the depths of the Shrika Rift. They hit the ground hard, Benjamin's breath driven from his lungs by the impact. But Karos's exoskeleton had taken the brunt of the fall. As the dust settled, Benjamin found himself cradled in the Hazari Queen's arms, largely unharmed. "You saved me," he managed to gasp out. Karos released him, her compound eyes unreadable. "We are even now human." Bruised and battered, they extracted themselves from the tangle of broken bridge cables. The noxious fumes were thicker here in the depths of the rift, and Benjamin's rebreather wheezed ominously. "We must find a way out quickly," Karos said, her own breathing labored. "This atmosphere will kill us both if we linger." Benjamin nodded, forcing his aching body into motion. As they began their ascent from the chasm floor, he cast a sidelong glance at his unlikely companion. Whatever happened next, he knew their fates were now inextricably linked. Benjamin and Karos emerged from the Shrika Rift, battered and exhausted. Weeks of relentless pursuit stretched behind them as they pushed onward across the unforgiving terrain of Zephyrus Prime. Their supplies dwindled, and fatigue etched deep lines into Benjamin's face. Even Karos's resilient exoskeleton showed signs of wear. At last they crested a final ridge and beheld their destination. Kordath, a Hazari outpost carved into the face of a towering canyon wall. The abandoned mining facility loomed before them, a testament to the conflict that had driven both their peoples from this world. "We made it," Benjamin breathed, his voice raspy from disuse. Karos clicked her mandibles. "Let us hope it still stands secure." They approached cautiously, wary of traps or hidden defenses, but the outpost systems recognized Karos's biosignature, granting them access to the living quarters. Benjamin immediately set to work fortifying their position, rigging makeshift alarms and establishing clear fields of fire. While he worked, Karos interfaced with the facility's databanks. Her compound eyes widened as she processed the information flowing through her neural pathways. "Benjamin," she called, her tone urgent, "you must see this." He joined her at the console, watching as reports and classified communiques scrolled across the screen. The picture they painted was grim. Princess Zara's coup had succeeded, and the new empress was pushing for total war against humanity. "She always was ruthless," Karos muttered, antenna drooping. "But this is madness." Benjamin's mind raced. "We have to stop her. Is there any way you can contact her? Reason with her?" Karos hesitated, mandibles working silently. Then with a decisive click, she turned to face him. "It is risky, but perhaps, yes, we could attempt to transmit an encrypted message." They argued for hours, debating the finer points of diplomacy and strategy. In the end, they crafted a proposal, an immediate ceasefire in exchange for Karos's safe return, and a summit to negotiate lasting peace. Benjamin's hand hovered over the transmit button. "You realize this could be signing our death warrants?" Karos placed her chitinous limb atop his. "It is our only hope to prevent billions more casualties." He nodded grimly and sent the message. Days crawled by with agonizing slowness. Benjamin and Karos took turns standing watch, jumping at every shadow. When the response finally came, it left them both stunned. Zara agreed to meet, but insisted on sending an armed escort to retrieve Karos. Despite Benjamin's protests, the Hazari Queen accepted. The Hazari strike force arrived with clockwork precision, led by Commander Vizrin. The elite assassin's predatory gaze swept over Benjamin and his makeshift defenses before settling on Karos. "Your Majesty," Vizrin purred, bowing low, "we've come to escort you home." Tension crackled in the air as Vizrin's team surrounded them. Benjamin's hand inched toward his weapon, every muscle coiled to spring. Suddenly the air shimmered, and a holographic image of Empress Zara materialized before them. Her voice rang out, sharp and clear. "Stand down, Vizrin! Your true master has been revealed." Confusion rippled through the assembled forces as Zara explained Vizrin's betrayal and Zorgax's machinations. In that moment of shocked silence, Benjamin locked eyes with Karos and Zara. An unspoken agreement passed between them, an alliance born of desperation and mutual need. But before they could act on this fragile accord, Vizrin snarled and opened fire. The room erupted into chaos. Benjamin dove for cover, returning fire as he shouted orders to his team. Karos moved with inhuman speed, her natural armor deflecting glancing blows as she grappled with her would-be captors. In the midst of the melee, Benjamin saw Vizrin take aim at Karos's unprotected back. Without thinking, he threw himself into the line of fire. White-hot agony lanced through him as the energy blast seared his flesh. As he fell, his outstretched hand struck a control panel. Alarms blared to life, and a synthesized voice cut through the din. "Warning! Self-destruct sequence initiated. 5 minutes to detonation." Benjamin's vision swam, the world reduced to blurry shapes and muffled sounds. He was dimly aware of Karos standing over him, her towering form silhouetted against the flashing emergency lights. Vizrin lay on the floor nearby, wounded but still dangerous. Karos's voice seemed to come from very far away. "I can save you, Benjamin, but to do so..." He tried to focus on her alien features, seeing the weight of an impossible choice in her compound eyes. As consciousness slipped away, Benjamin realized that the fate of two civilizations now rested in the hands of the Hazari Queen. Queen. Time slowed to a crawl as Karos's multifaceted eyes locked onto Vizrin's weapon, still trained on Benjamin's prone form. In that instant, she made her choice. With a primal screech that reverberated through the chamber, Karos launched herself at Vizrin. Her armored limbs collided with the commander's exoskeleton, sending them both crashing to the floor. Vizrin's weapon discharged, the energy blast scorching the ceiling as they grappled. "Traitor!" Vizrin hissed, mandibles clicking furiously as she struggled against Karos's grip. Karos didn't waste breath on a response. She drove her forehead into Vizrin's face with a sickening crunch, following up with a series of brutal strikes to vulnerable joint areas. Vizrin fought back savagely, her cybernetically enhanced strength nearly matching Karos's raw power. The two Hazari warriors rolled across the floor, a whirlwind of chitinous limbs and deadly precision. Alarms blared incessantly, counting down the minutes until Kordath's destruction. Benjamin stirred feebly, his consciousness fading in and out as he watched the titanic struggle unfold. Vizrin managed to break free, scuttling backward and activating her wrist-mounted plasma cutter. The air crackled with ozone as she slashed at Karos, scoring a deep gash across her thorax. Karos bellowed in pain but pressed forward, using her superior mass to bull-rush Vizrin into a control panel. Sparks showered around them as they continued their vicious duel. Karos rained down blows on Vizrin's head and torso, each impact resonating through the chamber. But Vizrin was cunning, exploiting openings in Karos's relentless assault. Her blade found purchase again and again, leaving Karos's exoskeleton pitted and leaking ichor. As the fight wore on, both combatants slowed, their movements growing sluggish from fatigue and accumulated damage. Vizrin feinted left, then lunged for Karos's exposed neck. But Karos had anticipated the move. She caught Vizrin's striking arm and, with a sickening wrench, tore it free from its socket. Vizrin shrieked in agony, staggering backward. Karos pressed her advantage, delivering a devastating uppercut that lifted Vizrin off her feet. The commander's body arced through the air, crashing into a bank of monitors with a shower of broken glass and twisted metal. Karos stood over her fallen foe, ichor dripping from numerous wounds. Vizrin twitched weakly, her systems failing. With grim finality, Karos brought her foot down on Vizrin's head, ending the threat once and for all. The victory was short-lived. A new series of alarms cut through the air, more urgent than before. 2 minutes to detonation, an emotionless voice intoned. Karos staggered to Benjamin's side, her own injuries taking their toll. "We must go," she chittered, hefting his semi-conscious form. Together they lurched toward the hangar bay, where a single evacuation shuttle waited. Karos unceremoniously dumped Benjamin into the co-pilot's seat, her dexterous limbs flying over the controls. The engines roared to life as the outpost's structural integrity began to fail around them. They blasted free of Kordath's docking clamps with seconds to spare. The shuttle's view screen polarized as a blinding flash consumed the outpost. A massive shockwave buffeted their craft, sending them tumbling end over end through Zephyrus Prime's thin atmosphere. When the turbulence subsided, a new vessel filled their view, the sleek, predatory form of Empress Zara's flagship. Tractor beams locked onto the battered shuttle, drawing them inexorably into its cavernous hangar bay. As the shuttle's hatch hissed open, Karos found herself face to face with her sister. Zara's expression was unreadable as she took in Karos's wounds and Benjamin's limp form. "Get them to medical," Zara ordered her attendants, "and prepare the interrogation chamber." Karos felt a chill run through her as Benjamin was taken away. She opened her mandibles to protest, but exhaustion overtook her. As darkness closed in, Karos realized that in saving Benjamin's life, she may have doomed them both. In the flagship's medical bay, Benjamin drifted in and out of consciousness. Through the haze of painkillers and regenerative treatments, he caught snippets of urgent conversation. Zara's voice cut through the fog, sharp and angry. Genetic alterations, cybernetic enhancements, UTF conspiracy. Benjamin struggled to focus, to make sense of the words. But before he could piece it together, a sedative flooded his system, plunging him back into oblivion. When he next awoke, Benjamin found himself restrained in a sterile white room. Zara loomed over him, her compound eyes glittering with nearly unleashed fury. "You will tell us everything," she hissed, "about your enhancements, your mission, and the UTF's true plans." Benjamin's mind raced. What enhancements? What was she talking about? He opened his mouth to deny any knowledge, but the words died in his throat as Karos entered the room. Her wounds had been treated, but exhaustion and conflict were etched into every line of her posture. She met Benjamin's gaze, and in that moment, he saw the weight of an impossible choice in her alien features. "I'm sorry," Karos whispered, her mandibles clicking softly, "but we must know the truth." As Zara began her interrogation, Benjamin steeled himself for what was to come. Whatever happened next, he knew that the fate of two civilizations now hung in the balance. Benjamin's eyes widened as Karos entered the interrogation chamber. The Hazari Queen's antenna twitched, betraying her inner conflict. Zara's voice cut through the tense silence. "Sister, it's time we learn the truth about this human's enhancements." Karos nodded, her compound eyes fixed on Benjamin. "I concur. We cannot afford further deception." Benjamin's mind reeled. Enhancements? What were they talking about? He flexed his arms against the restraints, feeling nothing out of the ordinary. Zara activated a holographic display, revealing detailed scans of Benjamin's body. "Explain these cybernetic implants, human. What is their purpose?" Benjamin stared at the images in disbelief. Intricate circuitry threaded through his nervous system. Enhancements he'd never known existed. I don't understand. This is impossible." Karos stepped forward, her voice low. "We detected anomalies during your medical treatment. These aren't standard UTF augmentations. What is your true mission here?" Benjamin's head throbbed as he struggled to reconcile this new information with his memories. "I swear I had no knowledge of this. I'm just a soldier, not some covert operative." Zara's patience wore thin. She signaled to an attendant who approached with a neural probe. "If you won't talk willingly, we have other methods." The next hours blurred into a haze of pain and confusion. Benjamin gritted his teeth against the invasion of his mind, determined to protect Earth's secrets. But how could he safeguard information he didn't even know he possessed? Through it all, Karos watched, her antenna drooping with each pained gasp from Benjamin. Yet she made no move to intervene. Meanwhile, aboard a cloaked vessel in a distant asteroid field, Zorgax paced restlessly. Holographic displays showed the latest intelligence on Zara's coup and the ongoing negotiations with the humans. "Fools!" he spat, mandibles clicking furiously. "They invite our own destruction with this weakness." His most loyal warriors gathered around him, eager for orders. Zorgax's eyes gleamed with malice. "Prepare our strike teams. When the moment is right, we'll remind the galaxy of true Hazari strength." Back on Earth, General Marcus Drake stood before a cadre of shadowy figures, the UTF's inner circle. Tactical displays filled the war room, detailing their audacious plan. "The ceasefire gives us the opening we need," Drake explained, his voice cold and precise. "Our new quantum devastator will annihilate the Hazari leadership in one stroke. Victory will be assured." One of the figures spoke up, voice distorted. "And the civilian casualties?" Drake's expression hardened. "Acceptable losses to secure humanity's dominance. We cannot afford half measures." As preparations for the strike accelerated, tensions aboard Zara's flagship reached a fever pitch. Human and Hazari diplomats engaged in heated debates, each side unwilling to cede ground. Karos found herself caught between two worlds. In quieter moments, she replayed her conversations with Benjamin, his words of cooperation and shared understanding. But as she gazed upon her fellow Hazari, scarred by years of war, her willpower wavered. Unable to shake her doubts, Karos made her way to Benjamin's cell. The human looked haggard, his spirit battered but unbroken. "Why do you resist?" she demanded. "Your enhancements prove you're part of some greater scheme. Help us understand, and perhaps we can avoid further bloodshed." Benjamin met her gaze, his voice hoarse. Karos, listen to me. There's more at stake here than you know. The faction behind this, they don't represent all of humanity. Their plans, they'll bring ruin to everyone, human and Hazari alike. Karos's antenna quivered. What do you mean? Benjamin took a deep breath. The UTF cabal, they're not interested in peace. They want to subjugate every alien race they encounter. Total human supremacy at any cost. The weight of his words hung in the air. Karos's mind raced, piecing together fragments of intelligence and her own observations. It fit a pattern she'd feared but hadn't dared voice. We have to stop them, Benjamin pleaded. Together we might have a chance. But if we stay divided, they'll destroy everything. Karos stood frozen, the fate of two civilizations balanced on the edge of a blade. Her duty to her people warred with the growing certainty that Benjamin spoke the truth. In that moment, she knew her next action would alter the course of the war, and perhaps the entire galaxy. Karos's mandibles clicked softly as she processed Benjamin's words. The gravity of his revelation settled over her like a suffocating fog. She glanced at the cell's surveillance devices, her antennae twitching nervously. We don't have much time, she whispered, her voice barely audible. If what you say is true, we must act now. With practiced efficiency, Karos disabled the restraints holding Benjamin. He rubbed his wrists, wincing at the raw skin beneath. Before he could speak, alarms blared throughout the ship, accompanied by a violent shudder that nearly knocked them off their feet. What's happening? Benjamin asked, steadying himself against the wall. Karos's compound eyes darted to the nearest view screen. Zorgax, she hissed. He's launched an attack on the flagship. The corridor outside erupted in chaos as Hazari crew members rushed to battle stations. Karos grabbed Benjamin's arm, pulling him into the fray. They weaved through the panicked throng, ducking into maintenance shafts and lesser-used passageways. As they neared the hangar bay, a familiar figure blocked their path. Empress Zara stood before them, her exoskeleton gleaming in the emergency lighting. Sister, Zara's voice cut through the din. What is the meaning of this? Karos stepped forward, shielding Benjamin with her body. Zara, listen to me. We've been deceived. There are forces at work here beyond our understanding. A nearby explosion rocked the ship, sending sparks cascading around them. Zara's antennae quivered with indecision. Explain, quickly. In hurried tones, Karos relayed Benjamin's warnings about the UTF cabal and their true intentions. Zara's compound eyes widened as the implications sank in. And Zorgax? Zara demanded. A pawn in a larger game, Benjamin interjected. But right now, he's the immediate threat. Zara's mandibles clicked rapidly as she processed the information. Another violent tremor shook the ship, forcing her decision. Very well. We will deal with Zorgax first. Then we'll address these allegations. The unlikely trio fought their way to the bridge where chaos reigned. Tactical displays showed Zorgax's forces breaching the flagship's outer defenses. Empress, a frantic officer called out. They've disabled our main weapons array. We're sitting ducks. Zara's eyes narrowed. Not yet, we're not. Prepare for close quarters combat. We'll take the fight to them. What followed was a brutal dance of violence and tactics. Karos and Benjamin found themselves fighting side by side, their contrasting combat styles complementing each other perfectly. Hazari and human moved as one, repelling borders and pushing back against Zorgax's onslaught. The battle raged across the void of space, culminating in a desperate assault on Zorgax's command ship. Karos, Benjamin, and Zara led the charge, their strike team cutting through enemy defenses with surgical precision. They cornered Zorgax on the bridge of his crippled dreadnought. The rebel commander snarled defiance, mandibles snapping furiously as he faced his captors. You fools, Zorgax spat. You've doomed us all with your weakness. Zara stepped forward, her voice cold. No, Zorgax. It is your short-sightedness that nearly brought ruin upon us. As Zorgax was restrained, Benjamin's enhanced senses tingled. He turned to Karos, his expression grim. We're not done yet. There's more at stake here than just this rebellion. Karos nodded, understanding the weight of what was to come. She faced her sister, antennae quivering with dedication. Zara, we need to talk. what Benjamin knows, it changes everything. In the aftermath of the battle, as repair crews swarmed over the damaged vessels, Benjamin revealed the full extent of his embedded mission. He spoke of the UTF Cabal's superweapon, codenamed Goliath, capable of destabilizing entire star systems. Zara listened in stunned silence, her earlier skepticism evaporating in the face of such overwhelming evidence. When Benjamin finished, she turned to Karos, her voice heavy with the burden of command. "What do you propose, sister?" Karos's compound eyes met Benjamin's gaze, a silent understanding passing between them. "We negotiate, for real this time, but first we need to stop this weapon." As they began to formulate a plan, an urgent transmission cut through their deliberations. General Drake's face appeared on the main view screen, his expression a mask of almost unchecked fury. "I don't know what game you're playing, Zara," Drake snarled, "but it ends now. We have something to show you." The screen shifted, revealing a desolate world on the galactic rim. What happened next would be seared into their memories forever. A wave of silvery mist descended upon the planet's surface. Where it touched, life simply ended. Plants withered and crumbled to dust. Animals collapsed, their bodies liquefying into puddles of organic sludge. Karos recoiled in horror, her mandibles clicking rapidly in distress. Benjamin's face paled, his enhanced mind grappling with the implications of such a weapon. Drake's voice cut through their shock. "This is the Purifier, our answer to the Hazari threat. Comply with our demands, or watch as we unleash it on your worlds." As the transmission cut out, a heavy silence fell over the bridge. Zara turned to Karos and Benjamin, her voice barely above a whisper. "What have we done?" Karos straightened, her willpower hardening. "What we must. Benjamin, we need to infiltrate the Goliath's construction site. It's our only chance to stop this madness." Benjamin nodded, a grim smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I was hoping you'd say that. I think I know just where to start." As they began preparations for their daring mission, Karos found herself drawn to Benjamin in ways she couldn't quite explain. In the midst of galactic upheaval and looming genocide, she discovered an unexpected anchor in this strange human's presence. Together they would face the greatest challenge of their lives. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, and time was running out. Benjamin met Karos's gaze, persistence etched across his features. "We have a chance, but we need to move fast." Zara nodded, her mandibles clicking decisively. "Agreed. I'll mobilize our strike teams. We end this now." Hours later, a small fleet of Hazari stealth fighters sliced through the inky void of space, their sleek hulls absorbing sensor sweeps. Benjamin crouched in the cockpit behind Karos, marveling at her dexterity as she piloted the craft with her multiple limbs. "Approaching the outer defense perimeter," Karos announced, her compound eyes fixed on the holographic display. "Prepare for—" A blinding flash erupted to their starboard, followed by the screech of tearing metal. Two of their escort fighters disintegrated in an instant. "Evasive maneuvers!" Zara's voice crackled over the comms. "They've detected us!" The space around them lit up with turbolaser fire. Karos's antenna twitched as she wove a frantic path through the barrage, Benjamin's stomach lurching with each wild turn. "We're not going to make it through their defenses," one of the Hazari pilots shouted. Karos's mandibles set in a grim line. "Leave that to me." She banked hard, positioning her ship at the forefront of their formation. "All units, form up behind me. We're punching through." What followed was a harrowing dance of destruction. Karos's personal guard peeled off one by one, drawing enemy fire as she carved a path towards the planet's surface. Benjamin watched in awe and horror as Hazari after Hazari sacrificed themselves, buying precious seconds for their mission. They hit the atmosphere in a screaming fireball, alarms blaring as the craft's hull temperature skyrocketed. Through the maelstrom, Benjamin glimpsed their target, a sprawling facility half buried in a mountain range. "There!" he shouted, pointing. "The main entrance!" Karos nodded, her antennae quivering with tension. She brought the ship down hard, skidding across the landing pad in a shower of sparks. As the hatch hissed open, Benjamin's enhanced senses registered a cacophony of alarms, and the pounding of boots. "Move!" Zara bellowed, leading the charge out of the ship. They sprinted across the exposed landing pad, energy bolts sizzling past their heads. Benjamin's implants kicked into overdrive, time seeming to slow as he processed the incoming threats. He grabbed Karos, yanking her down as a rocket screamed overhead. "Thanks," she chittered, mandibles brushing his cheek. They reached the blast doors, Zara laying down suppressing fire as Benjamin interfaced with the security panel. His cybernetic enhancements made short work of the encryption, the massive doors grinding open. "We're in," he shouted. As they plunged into the facility's depths, Benjamin's gut twisted. He knew the true scope of what they faced, and he prayed they weren't already too late. Late, the facility shuddered, alarms blaring as they raced through winding corridors. "This way!" Benjamin shouted, his cybernetic implants processing schematics at lightning speed. They rounded a corner and skidded to a halt before a massive blast door. Zara's mandibles clicked in frustration. "It's sealed tight. We need—" Her words cut off as Karos stepped forward, her antennae quivering with persistence. "I can override it. Cover me." As Karos interfaced with the control panel, Benjamin and Zara took up defensive positions. The distant sound of boots echoed through the hallway. "Hurry!" Zara hissed. With a grinding screech, the blast door slid open. They rushed inside, finding themselves in a cavernous chamber. At its center loomed the Goliath prototype, a monstrous apparatus dripping with alien technology. "By the hive," Karos whispered, her compound eyes wide. Benjamin's enhanced vision scanned the device, his mind racing. The anti-life entity, it's not just a weapon, it's a gateway. Before they could process this revelation, the chamber erupted in chaos. UTF soldiers poured in, led by a figure Benjamin recognized with a sinking heart, General Drake. "So close and yet so far," Drake sneered, his cybernetic eye glowing malevolently. What followed was a desperate battle. Benjamin, Karos, and Zara fought with everything they had, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Zara fell first, a plasma bolt searing through her carapace. "Sister!" Karos screamed, rage fueling her movements as she cut down 3 soldiers in quick succession. Benjamin fought his way to the Goliath's control panel, his fingers flying across the interface. "Karos! I can set it to overload, but someone needs to—" He turned and time seemed to slow. Karos stood before him, her eyes filled with an emotion he couldn't quite name. "I know," she said softly. Before Benjamin could react, Karos shoved him into an escape pod. The last thing he saw before the hatch sealed was her mandibles forming what might have been a smile. The pod rocketed away from the facility as a blinding light engulfed everything. Benjamin's enhanced senses picked up the quantum cascade tearing through space-time, centered on the anti-life entity's homeworld. Hours later, Benjamin found himself aboard Zara's flagship. The Empress lay on a medical bed, her carapace cracked and leaking ichor. Her compound eyes fixed on Benjamin with startling clarity. "Listen closely, human," Zara rasped. "What happens next? It falls to you." Benjamin leaned in, his heart heavy with grief and the weight of what was to come. As Zara spoke her dying wish, he knew his path was set. The war that had defined his existence was over, but a new battle was just beginning.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.